me out on this one, okay? It's not as crazy as it sounds. And man, if it happens to be accurate, that would be a heck of a thing. Good morning to you. Good Monday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Penguins. Comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into football and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Pirates in the same place that you found this. Stanley Cup playoffs are a lot of fun, in large part because there are a lot of goals being scored in the Western Conference bracket. Some of that's because there's a ton of offensive talent over there, and some of that's because nobody can stop a puck to save their lives. I kind of went into these playoffs with that mindset, and it's funny that the one guy that I'd bring up as an exception over there would, of course, be Connor Hellebuck in Winnipeg, and he was terrible for the Jets. The Jets were gone before you knew it. And now you look at the rest of these teams. Look at the remaining teams. Did you watch the Vancouver-Edmonton game last night? Did you see that? These are two rosters that are just loaded, especially with up-front talent. I was about to say talent overall, but especially up-front, although the Canucks obviously have Quinn Hughes on the back end, but there's just nothing in goal now. At least, Rick Tocchet's got an excuse because Thatcher Demko's hurt, but it doesn't change what we're seeing, and it doesn't change my point, because you can go to the other series that's ongoing over there between Colorado and Dallas. This is the same thing. Every once in a while, one of them will get hot. Alexander Georgiev had some moments over the weekend, but you're not seeing playoff level goaltending at all. Jake Ottinger might be the guy who would be the most capable of the four who are left, but he hasn't done anything in these playoffs either. And for that matter, he was a .905 save percentage guy in the regular season. You know who was better than that? You know who is better than all four of these guys, I think? And that's where I'm going today. This episode is brought to you by Bet Online, your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NHL, NBA playoffs. Get the latest odds and lines, including all team matchups, player props, odds on just about everything that's out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. I have both spoken on this program and put into print that I believe it would be very challenging for Kyle Dubas to move Tristan Jarry's contract. I see it as, onerous beyond words, considering there's 4 years and another 20 plus million on it. And I say that without considering the actual landscape. See, that's a little bit lazy on my part, but it's also, I can throw myself a bit of a mulligan here, since the caliber of general performance at the game's most important position had, past tense, been so high, higher than it's ever been over the previous couple of decades, that you just kind of got used to it. Yeah, of course, there's going to be 20, 25 legitimately great goaltenders. It's not asking a whole lot. It's a big planet. And from there, when you consider that some teams, and the Penguins not so long ago were one of them, are clever enough to have two of them in the house, then you're probably talking about 30, 35 of these guys. So even with 32 franchises now, there should be one for every team. And if anyone is trying to hide one somewhere, the expansion draft will expose that, just as happened right here with the Penguins. But it's just not the case anymore. It's not. You can come up with all kinds of theories as to why that might be, and I've heard a bunch of them already, not least of which is the quality of shooting, the volume of traffic, the amount of screens and tips and rebounds and and how all it takes is just one of those things to be a shortcoming for a certain goaltender, and that goaltender's found out, and that's the end of that goaltender. But the bottom line from the Pittsburgh perspective here is that maybe, well, let me throw out both possibilities here, okay? Maybe Jarry is in fact tradable, and you could have someone take that contract off your hands, and you could do something a little bit more constructive with that money, with that cap space, than employing a player that you clearly don't trust. The Penguins could not have made any clearer than they just did that they don't trust Jarry. They can say whatever they want after the fact. What they did showed how they feel. Or two, you could do the same thing, which is to look at everyone, look at the position as a whole, league-wide, worldwide, and ask yourself for the umpteenth time if maybe you do in fact have one of those good goaltenders already and that there's still some door that hasn't been unlocked. I happen to be very much in that first camp, but I could understand why some, including Dubas himself, might be in the second. Here's what I can share with you from communicating with these people on a regular basis and covering this team year-round. They believe, all of them inside the Penguins, there's no exception to this, in Jarry's talent. I do too. We've all seen what he can do, and we've seen that he can compete with any goaltender head-to-head on any given night. And there are occasions in which he can stretch that out over a few weeks, even a couple months. There also are occasions where he's just not that at all, and you reach the point where you go, wow, is he even into this? To me, that outweighs the rest. To them, it might be something different. But I'll tell you this, if I'm any of those four coaches in the West right now, I'm like 35. Get in there if I had him available. When we come back, J1Q. Today's J1Q comes from Chris, who asks, very simply, DK, is there any chance that Sidney Crosby does a 5 or 6 million AAV to try to bring back Jake Gensel at 7 or 8 million AAV? Chris, I think, first of all, that Jake's going to end up higher than that. I really do. And I felt that when he was here. I also was dismissing the idea that he would end up with some kind of Mitch Marner, William Nylander figure where he makes it up into 8 figures. Mostly because I think those guys got paid just for the same reason that overrated Maple Leafs always get overpaid. There's not really a thing around the NHL where the rest of the teams go, oh, so that's how much you made in Toronto? Oh, okay, well, guess what? We're not going to overrate you here. We're not going to build a statue in your honor because you scored a handful of goals and made a couple of clever commercials earlier in your career. So if Jake is around, I don't know, let's just say 8 or 9, and I think that's plausible. And I think Jake is only helping himself with every passing game in these playoffs, partly because he's been as productive as he has for the Hurricanes, but maybe even more so because for the first time really in his career, he's had a sustained stretch where he's had to produce without Sid and show everybody that he could produce without Sid, even though we knew that here. We saw what he was able to do night after night after night. We also saw, for that matter, what he was able to do when he was on a line with Yevgeny Malkin. And yeah, now everybody else sees it. So now everybody else will know that he is exactly what we knew him to be. That said, don't bring Sid into it. Want to hear something nuts? Everybody knows that Sid has had this contract forever, the 13-year one, in which he's got an AAV of $8.7 million each year. That's your cap hit. That's how it's broken down for cap purposes. What you probably didn't know is that this past season, Sid was actually paid $3 million. Now, that's not going to have, Sid standing in line for soup at the shelter. But it's $3 million for Sid. And no matter how smart and clever and everything else you are with your money, it's pretty ridiculous that that's how much he was actually receiving from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Leave Sid out of it, especially after what just happened, especially after, Sid being the one who was the most upset, and Sid being upset being a big part of the reason that the Penguins didn't even make the playoffs because they couldn't afford to lose any of those points that they basically gave away while everyone, including Sid, was in on the collective pout. No, you're not going to Sid and saying, hey, Sid, can you do less so that we can go sign Jake and everybody can be happy? My understanding is that the Penguins are open-minded about pursuing Jake. My understanding is that Jake and his family and his representation are open-minded about hearing whatever it is that the Penguins have to offer. I have no idea where it's going to go. No one on either side seems to have any idea where it's going to go. But no, don't be bringing Sid into it. I appreciate the thought process and whatever. I'm just saying, no. I appreciate the question as well. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Penguins. We're going to do another one of these tomorrow.